Human sexuality is a topic I have not intentionally I have not engaged on and studied with carefully. But I have been put in situations when I have no choice but to deal with the issue. My first engagement of this issue happened when I applied for a teaching job at United Theological Seminary of the Twin Cities in Minnesota, a seminary well known for its advocacy in support of LGBTQ rights and a sanctuary for those minoritized because of their sexual orientation and gender identities. Second, happened in my day-to-day life as a professor when I had to deal with students who have been hurt by the church because of their sexual orientation and gender identities, but have found United Seminary of the Twin Cities as a sanctuary, a safe place. This safe place is crucial because, as Chris Glaser puts it, usually for most gay women and men, coming out in the church has meant coming out of the church. The church has become for them a giant tomb smelling of death rather than life. The third happened in San Pedro Sula, Honduras, when at the end of my lecture on predatory globalization and global terror, someone asked me if it is true that someone asked me if it is true that their partner church, the United Church of Christ USA, has accepted gays and lesbians into their congregations. The question came to me as a shock, and the way I responded even surprised me. If there was a time when I believed that the Spirit is actively at work, that could be the occasion. I said, if it is not entirely accurate that the UCC USA is admitting or accepting gays and lesbians into the fold. The gays and lesbians have been in our churches for so long. It is just that now they are coming out. Yes, they are coming out, and some are on the way to coming out. Many are in our churches, and now by hindsight, I remember fondly my childhood pastor was gay. He enjoyed night swimming with the kids. Sad at that time, it was costly for him to come out. On the other hand, staying in the closet is even more costly. It is the cost of not being true to oneself with all its consequences. Moreover, it is at the cost of our community's well-being. So we must bring to the open or provide a safe venue where we can deal with the topic of human sexuality, particularly sexual identities, in creative and responsive ways. Having provided the space, we must reframe the issue if we are first to do justice to those minoritized and oppressed by virtue of their sexual orientation and gender identities, whether through outright condemnation or our complicit silence. I said many times, silence is a lie when truth needs to be spoken. Second, we must reframe the issue if we are to stop the continuing victimization of those who do not conform to heterosexual normativity. Third, we must reframe the issue if we are to address the real culprit, which is heterosexism. Fourth, we must reframe the issue if we are to get unstuck and move forward in the direction of healing and liberation. Reframing the issue is crucial. The framework within which issues will be viewed and decided is often tantamount to determining the result, says Jeffrey Fipper. A new framework or a new mind is needed. Linus, a character in the comic strip Peanuts, got it right. You can't learn the new math with an old mind. We need a new mind to deal with a new math. Mark Twain expressed a similar insight. You can't rely on your eyes when your imagination is out of focus. So we are dealing with an adaptive challenge, not just technical challenge. Technical problems may be complex, but the solution lies in the hands of an expert. Adaptive challenge can only be addressed through a change in people's worldview, mindset, self-understanding, beliefs, values and priorities, habits and loyalties. So what is this reframing and refocusing that we need to do in relation to the issue of human sexuality, particularly on various expressions of sexual identities? I say that we need to reframe and refocus the issue first from that of homosexuality, or more generally, sexual orientation, to the pervasive patterns in society with regard to sexual injustice. So that's the shift in terms of focus. Is someone's sexual identity harming you? Or gender orientation or sexual orientation harming you and the community? Or is it sexual injustice that people do whatever their sexual orientation or gender identity is? Sometimes we need a comedian like Lynn Lavner to put things in perspective. The Bible, she notes, contains 6 admonishments to homosexuals and 362 admonishment to heterosexuals. That doesn't mean that God doesn't love heterosexuals. It's just that they need more supervision. Second, we need to change the subject and refocus on making homosexuality as the problem to heterosexism as the problem. Lastly, we need to focus on the issue of power and justice, because heterosexism, not heterosexual relation, is a system of power relations. The main culprits that we have to face and address are sexual injustices, particularly under the regime of heterosexism. Sexual injustice takes various forms and expressions with 3 interlocking components: sex negativity, compulsory heterosexuality, and sexualized violence. We cannot wish away sex negativity in our churches by not talking about it. Christian sex negativity has serious consequences, and our capacity to enter into authentic relationships. The problem does not end here. The LGBTQ are made the repositories for heterosexual people's disease about sexuality. There's also this regime of heterosexuality that forces those who are sexually different to conform to the norm. Moreover, sexual injustice may take the form of sexual and gender violence, finding expressions, for example, in male violence against women, children, and others who are considered weak and powerless. So patriarchy and heterosexism provide the overarching framework and system in which these various forms of sexual injustice happen. Heterosexism can be defined as the system of advantages bestowed on heterosexuals, granting them the superior status and rights in a culture and institutions of society only because of their sexual identity as heterosexuals. Heterosexism asserts the heteronormativity of heterosexual identity, and that those who fit this norm have the right to police others to conform to the norm. It grants power and privilege to some, heterosexuals, while condemning others as deviant and defective. So under the hegemony of heterosexism, same-gender loving persons cannot be models of what it means to be truly and fully human. No matter how hard they try, they will always fall short or miss the mark, amartia, sablay, of what it means to be human. And sadly, religion has been used to legitimize this oppression. Disguised in the form of offering salvation, it takes the moral high ground with the mantra, love the sinner, hate the sin. Those who are considered different or those that diverge from the norm must be fixed, saved, expelled, or punished if recalcitrant. We have been told again and again that the issue of homosexuality is dividing the church. That is not true. It is not homosexuality that is divisive. It is heterosexism because of its blindness to God's gift of many forms of sexuality. Heterosexism is divisive because it cannot accept other forms of sexual expression. It is divisive because it cannot accept difference. Difference, or more particularly sexual difference, to use the lines of poet Audre Lorde, is not the problem, but our attitude toward difference and what we do with it. Unfortunately, we have not been trained to deal with difference in healthy and creative ways. Differences are not the problems to be solved or fixed, but assets to be embraced and celebrated. When we shift the focus from homosexuality as a problem to that of sexual violence and heterosexism, we have chosen to focus on the issue of justice. At the heart of the matter is justice. When the focus is justice, the direction of our struggle is not toleration, it's not inclusion, not even acceptance, important as they are, but transformation which demands the dismantling of patriarchal worldviews and hierarchical power relations that legitimizes gender and sexual oppression of those who are sexually different. This shift in subject changes not only what is talked about, how it is talked about, it also changes the subject. The one who speaks and must be listened to are those people who are minoritized because of their sexual orientation. We must open the space for the sexualized others to lead in the conversation. Heterosexual hegemony and sexual violence would not have thrived without religious legitimation. Religious legitimation is rampant. Hence, our response must be proactive, not just reactive. Christian communities must counter religiously legitimated sexual injustice and violence. They must articulate theologies that confront sexual violence and advance creative articulations that promote creative and healthy views of our sexual identities and differences. They must articulate theologies that are sex-positive, women-friendly, and queer-friendly. Moreover, Christian communities in their theological articulations must help equip members to live responsibly and faithfully as sexual persons, not despite their sexualities, but through their sexualities. At the heart of the Christian gospel is the incarnation, which provides a strong foundation in articulating a positive and creative view of human sexuality. Incarnation, God becoming flesh, is God affirming the goodness of human life, which includes sexuality. Sexuality is God's good gift, says the United Methodist Book of Discipline. Further, God's incarnation in Jesus means that the divine has assumed the fullness of humanity and sexuality in its diverse manifestations is an essential part of our humanity. Our sexuality, our way of being in the world as embodied selves, male and female, involves our whole being and is intrinsic to our dignity. In God becoming flesh, God affirms our embodied existence, including sexuality, as integral to who we are and how we express our love with others. We cannot be truly human apart from our sexualities. How we reflect the image of God in ourselves is dependent upon how we embody our sexual identities. It is important that we articulate the purpose of sexuality or purposes of sexuality if we are to find our bearings. I concur with the UCC USA statement. The purpose of sexuality are to enhance human wholeness and fulfillment, to express love, commitment, delight, and pleasure, and to bring new life into the world and give glory to God. Sexuality is intended to express love, mutuality, and justice. So when we are called to judge whether a particular sexual behavior is ethical or not, the criteria or norms of mutuality, of love, and justice must be raised. So this brings us back to our focus, which is not on homosexuality as a problem, but heterosexism and the various forms of social injustice. Are you comfortable with your own bodies or at ease with your embodied sexuality? Are we true to our sexualities in ways that are life-affirming and joy-filled? In the end, what truly counts is how we live our sexual identities that is true to ourselves and that which promotes just, loving, mutual relation. The direction is sexual integrity that passes the criteria of love, mutuality, and justice. It is not our sexual orientation. No one gains an extra point for being heterosexual, nor loses point by being gay, lesbian, bisexual, asexual. What matters is character and conduct, says Marvin Allison. The ethical emphasis, he continues, should be sexual integrity. What is the relevance if we know the sexual identity, orientation, for example, of a person? However, when we discern that a person is seeking to live with integrity, it is fair to assume that the person is invested in relationships based on honesty, fairness, commitment, mutual care, and respect. And further, that he or she wants to contribute to the well-being of others and to the community at large. Are we living a life of sexual integrity, whatever our sexual orientation is? This is the main issue that we must address. When we focus on this matter, we know that we have much work to do. Rather than be preoccupied with legislating policies that repress other expressions of sexualities because they do not conform to the heterosexual norm. When we focus on this, we actually need each other, rather than putting hindrances to the recognition of other sexual identities, which is not satisfactory after all. I hope and I pray, as well as work, that we learn to accept our many sexualities, our many orientations, and focus our energies in opposing sexual injustice wherever and whenever we find them, and promote sexual integrity, not in spite of or despite sexuality, but through our various sexual identities. The challenges are enormous, but we must be persistent. We must keep our lights burning until daybreak, and a new, unhospitable tomorrow covers the face of the earth. Thank you.